Yeah, I think it's a planned diversionary effort to keep us from thinking about what we should be thinking about. So maintain your situational awareness. As you saw in the videos and the drones, they're easy to make and they're readily available.
And what do you think we should be focusing on?
We should focus on a better America and our personal higher growth and taking care of our families.
Are you optimistic, I guess, for the future?
I'm completely optimistic. Also, during COVID, I had a medical reaction. No, I died.
Wow.
And I bled out. My blood pressure is 50 over 40. And I was surrounded by beautiful white light, and it was the same feeling. And I made a choice that I want to come back and I want to do some things.
Chris Lehto, welcome to LehtoFiles.
Mysterious drones have been spotted over nuclear facilities for decades, and recently we've had drones over nuclear facilities and military bases. You may have heard in the UK they've had 16 days of continuous drones or UAPs over their military bases, and we've seen even drones in civilian areas. So I've gotten a lot of questions and comments. Are they advanced technologies? Are these hobbyists, going out and doing disruptive operations? Or is it something even stranger, such as UAPs or some sort of disinformation campaign? Today, I'm joined by Peter DeNucci. He's an experienced UAV pilot. He's also an author. He brings decades of aviation expertise and a deeply personal perspective to the topic that we will discuss. So, together, we'll analyze these incidents, the drone incidents. So, I have an expert. We'll explore the implications and we'll discuss Peter's extraordinary personal experiences with extraterrestrial beings, which inspired his latest book, Among Us Unveiling Hidden Realities. Thank you for being here, Peter.
Thank you for inviting me. As you know, I was an airline pilot for 30 years. And then I jumped into the military UAV flying and then have my own company. And we have some videos later when you're ready.
And you said you had 18,000 commercial hours. Can you just step through your career as a commercial pilot and then later on as a drone pilot and then how you got into writing books?
Okay, so basically I did it backwards. Most people start as a military pilot, then go to the airlines. I did it the exact opposite. I was living up in Wisconsin with my family, 12 siblings, and we all worked in the cheese factories. And I said, I want to get out of here. I want to fly jets. So I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona and I learned how to fly. I became a flight instructor at 21, taught for the university, and then became a commuter airline pilot, flew the commuters, and then went to Piedmont Airlines, which became US Air, which is American Airlines now, and flew for them 10,000 hours in the Airbus, 10,000 hours in the 737. Um, that's when Boeing was an engineering company instead of a uh, cutting some corners, let's say. So during the flying, we had the unfortunate human factor error rate of one jet crashing per year. So US Air lost one major jet for 5 years in a row. So did the other airlines. So people were dying by the thousands. There was a crash every 8 weeks.
Wow. When was
So
this?
between 1986 and 1991.
Okay. Wow.
So I was 20, I was born in 60. So I was 26 to 31 years old and I couldn't understand because what did I know? Nothing. How these airplanes are crashing. So the FAA called NASA. NASA came into US Air, which is my personal experience. I can't speak for the other airlines, although I know they had to go through the same thing. We were on the verge of being shut down by the government because of these crashes. So my job was to go with NASA. They picked 22 out of the 6,000 of us. And I came to Moffett Field and worked with some NASA people. And the concept of human factors was born in the airlines in 1990, 91. And we put the accident rate to zero.
To zero. That's
Literally,
amazing. Yeah.
literally that fast by paying attention to situational awareness, the red flags, communication skill sets, because you got to remember Piedmont Airlines and US Air. So this was US Air by then. We had 7 airlines merged into one. You have different cultures going on. And if the cultures are different, you're going to have an unseen lack of communication. You're actually not even aware of it. And that caused problems in the cockpit. So we did address it. It got fixed. And then our big joke was, we don't even need a runway. We can land in the Hudson River. Haha. So that was Sully. And he was a human factor expert at US Air too, but he was teaching at the universities. And he had his own company. I had my own company, Apollo Publishing, and I decided to write books. And then I taught in the hospitals. So the same thing captains were learning in the cockpit was the same thing surgeons needed to learn in the operating room.
Okay, and I'm guessing this is a CRM, so crew resource management, because that came over to the Air Force, and we even had it in the fighter pilot community. You know, as I was an F-16 pilot for 18 years, and it's single pilot in our US F-16s, but we still used crew resource management, where you're using your wingman. You know, it's not the guy right next to you in the plane; it's the guy in the plane right next to you. So that came over to the Air Force, and we started tracking, and we had, saw amazing decreases in certainly F-16 crashes. You know, most of it was initially they called it the lawn dart, and I think it was a lot of engine issues, a lot of maintenance issues, and once they fixed those, then it came down to mostly human factors. Where if the pilot actually ended up dying, my first inclination is it was the pilot probably that messed up. Either he was we had F-22 crashes where the pilots were getting poisoned by oxygen systems. So I'm not saying it's the pilot's fault necessarily, but the pilot is a single point of failure. So if you work on human factors, you can really decrease those numbers. We never got to zero like the aviation, or commercial aviation, but we got close.
Well, you're flying something different. Your risk is higher,
Yeah.
and your missions are different. Ours is very simple. Don't kill your passenger.
Yeah.
So that's completely different than yours. And you're right, your co-pilot or wingman, so to speak, he's in a different aircraft, but you still have to communicate. So you nailed it. Yeah, exactly. And that science was helpful. It helped us all grow into being better pilots. And safety is something you take to heart. So we went through that with the airlines and then the healthcare system. And if you notice, if you go into a hospital, you look too healthy that you never need a hospital. But if you went into a hospital, they put a band on your wrist and they verify your birthday, every single person that comes in that room, because they want to make sure they have the right patient. You couldn't imagine when I started this 15 years ago in the Florida healthcare system, my job was to stop wrong site and wrong person surgery. Wrong site surgery is you go in for a left knee replacement and they replace the right one.
Yeah.
Wrong person surgery is our names are kind of similar and they do the surgery on the wrong person. Yes, that really happened. And each one averaged $3 million. So then they became interested. But
then they became interested.
That's the advancement of human factors. And I applied it in all my books. And also with ET activity, my big thing, create the relationship with the guy flying the ET spaceship instead of the technology that he's flying. So that's just me.
Well, definitely, we'll get to your book towards the end, but we'll get started with drones. So what's your experience with drones?
Okay, so when I left the airlines, I retired after 25 years, and then I taught in the healthcare system. Then I went to a defense contractor and flew a Global Hawk aircraft. That airplane is the size of a 757. It's Air Force issued. I was a test pilot. And then I realized we needed border patrol. So I put together a company called Apollo UAS, and we bought those smaller drones, not the kind that you buy at Walmart for $500. By small, I mean the size of a small car. and can go 60 miles an hour and stay up there for 7 or 8 hours. Your little DJI drones are, 33 minutes, whatever, lithium ion batteries. The ones I'm talking about, the small ones, 7 hours, and they use both vertical takeoff with lithium ion battery systems. And then it kicks in a gas engine, and then they go 60 miles an hour. And I thought Border Patrol, at $100,000 a unit, this would be the appropriate tool for them to see the entire border for 7 hours from the back of a pickup truck. So we can run that video.
Yeah, let's do it now. Let's check it out.
Okay. Okay, that's me standing next to the 7-foot wingspan, 7-hour endurance. These little propellers allow you to take off and go straight up, and then the gas engine kicks in and you can go 60 miles an hour for 7 hours.
That reminds me of a drone video that came off the West Coast. Looked just like that thing.
Well, they're made right here in Scottsdale. Well, I'm not in Scottsdale now. I'm on a boat somewhere in the Pacific, but they're made here in the Southwest. 5 or 6 engineers got together and literally built this from scratch. There we are, getting ready in the desert. We're going to launch it. And then let's go to this picture. That's it. That's kind of big. Now that's the small one. That's 7-foot wingspan. They have a 10-foot wingspan also. And that's the control deck. So Pelican suitcase, back of a pickup truck. Border Patrol would have loved this. Get a smart kid out there and he opens it up and starts clicking and the plane takes off and you can see everything. You can take the camera. Technically the word is payload, but the camera can track anything you want it to do. You just click on it and it'll track that, say, cartel truck coming across the border. Automatically, it'll just track it. So they were pretty good on that. And here's the takeoff. And if you talk to people who saw these things over in New Jersey, etc., you're going to say it sounded like this.
Okay, and then the gas engine kicks in there and it takes off, yeah?
Yep.
Or leaves the area.
Yeah, so you can go beyond line of sight. There's ways to use LTE from the cell phones, so you could like go on the other side of those mountains, even if you can't see it.
Very good. It's consistent. 60 knots. 60 knots.
So that was the takeoff, and then you
Cool.
could edit up if there's too much later. Here is the landing. This is my friend John. He was from General Dynamics. They were trying to work with the Border Patrol. So, Chris, no runway is required. That is the key to VTOL,
Excellent.
vertical up and landing.
It's very cool. So it uses the electric engines to do the vertical takeoff and landing, and then it uses the gas engine to do your long duration.
Correct.
Did the government buy these? You know,
So these are 5
entity-
kids in a warehouse that put this all together. And I found them through a friend of a friend from the defense contractor I worked through, because I was very enthused and interested in protecting the border with Donald Trump, and that we could use technology to create situational awareness. And I thought this was the perfect deal. A pickup truck from the Border Patrol comes out, you unload the Pelican suitcases, you're in the air in less than an hour. You can see everything, infrared, everything. I can read the name on your t-shirt, everything. and you can find out who the good guys and the bad guys are, and then radio that up ahead and do good work.
It's
So
awesome. So
they're in Scottsdale. I'll text it to you later. You could edit it in.
okay, but they already exist, and basically five engineers were able to build these systems,
Oh, rapidly. And this is
rapidly. So
5 years ago.
5 years ago. So yeah, so it's in all probability our government has these, or elements, at least elements of our government has these kind of exact drones, or drones that could have these capabilities.
Absolutely, the government can have this type of a drone and even advanced because the video we just saw is 5 years old. So you could imagine what they have now. And personally, I believe it's a diversionary um, rationale to get people focused on that and maybe not focus on other things, distraction, disinformation, etc.
Okay, well let's review some of the notable recent sightings, and then I'll pick your brain on what you think of each of these. So we have
Okay.
this December 2023. So this is a year ago. I made a few videos reporting on this. Langley Air Force Base, Virginia. So you had swarms of drones cause disruptions to the entire fighter wing. It actually had to relocate, and so they used advanced counter drone systems, but there was never an explanation. We still haven't gotten any explanation a year later on what were they, did they take out any of these things? Were they actual drones? It's just been, totally mute from our government. Do you have any essay on the Langley Air Force Base drones, or any idea what that could
Not
be?
specifically that, but the first thing we have to do is we have to define swarming.
Mm.
So my master's in engineering was based on unmanned flight systems, and swarming was a class I had to take. Going back to school in my 50s. Wow. Okay. So I could still pay attention, but swarming is a concept where we mimic bees and ants with the drone. And the Air Force with the MQ-9, they tried to have one pilot run 4 separate MQ-9 drones. Very popular drone with missiles, etc. It's always on TV.
The Predator, yeah.
The Predator drone. And they couldn't pull it off because one guy running 4 separate machines simultaneously was too much for the human. So the concept of swarming was created, and swarming is one guy can run 1,000 drones. And you see this when you see parades and different things, and they're up in the sky and they make, the American flag or whatever. It's one person running 1,000 drones, and the drones with artificial intelligence are talking to each other like bees or ants. And so one human is required to send one input of thought or one direction, and they'll all behave in a pre-programmed AI way to design whatever they were pre-programmed for. So if you were to come over to Langley, this is the only thing I can say about Langley. If they were to come over there, they were swarming. And what that does is gives you the sense of you're up against something with overwhelming force, so to speak. There's so many of them. And then you just have to ask yourself the political questions. Who wants that?
Everybody.
Our enemies want that. They want to create tension. They want us to go into some certain level of fear that there's overwhelming force. Look at them all. That's the only thing I could guess. But the drones themselves, unless you arm them, are harmless. But they can have cameras that can read everything, infrared, facial recognition. They can be equipped with the size of a pack of cigarettes, C4, land and explode. They can do a lot. But who would want to take on Langley? So
Yeah.
that's a political question. My first guess would be the Chinese.
Yeah, it is, on the coast. And so you could, launch from ships, I guess, VTOL from ships. But then if it is, what confuses me, and we'll get to the RAF bases here in a second, is if it's if they're military drones, adversary systems, why would you have the lights on? We always flew blacked out as at night. We did not want to be identified.
Yeah,
And so if you're flying out there with all the lights on, it just seems really strange to me that if
that's
it
the
is
question I
adversary,
say
yeah.
about alien spaceships. Why did they put lights on? All right, everybody, before we go to Earth, make sure you do the FAA corresponding light system for your spaceship. No. Uh, well, then you get into deeper discussions, Chris. If it's not the Chinese, then what three-letter agency here in the US is doing this? And those kind of questions um, going to open a lot of doors.
Okay. What about so New Jersey? So now we fast forward to this year. So November 2024 started last year, still going on. I saw a News Nation interview with the mayor, um,
Yeah.
and basically said that they're still seeing drones all over the place and groups of drones. So I don't know if they're large swarms, but it sounded like car-sized drones, and they spotted them near Picatinny Arsenal, which from my understanding, I just did a search online, is that there aren't any nuclear weapons there, but there are advanced weapons. And all of this has sparked an FBI investigation. So FBI is looking into it. What's your take on these car-sized drones? It looks like one of those drones you just showed us.
Yeah. Totally capable of any payload. They're big enough. I'm pretty sure they're VTOL also. The one I just showed you, vertical takeoff landing, battery powered vertical, limited time, gasoline powered forward, hours and hours of time, and heavier payload. So you've got, and you're a pilot, the thrust to weight ratio. That's why we don't see electric jets, electric airplanes. The batteries are too heavy to lift it for the endurance you're looking for. But again, there's a lot of theories out there. The deep state, what do they have to do with this? Why are they doing it? And why are people making certain choices of how to run the world? And I know I'm being vague, and I'm being vague on purpose, but um, if you can create enough disinformation and enough distraction, you can guide the thought patterns of the whole society. And I think it's disgusting, but I think that's happening every single day. And I think these drones are part of it. Now, I saw the best interview with a senator from Tennessee, and I can't remember his name right now, but he said, bring the drones down to Tennessee because we all have 12 gauges.
Tim Burchett. That sounds like
Yeah.
Tim Burchett. Yeah.
And to be honest, that was my first thought. If you're getting invaded by drones, they're so easy to shoot down. So,
Well,
um,
I was thinking about that, and they're actually really not easy. Your small arms fire can only go up to maybe 2 or 3 thousand feet. If you can hit something up that high. So if you could hover the drone. So my question was, can you fly using the gas engine? Fly right over the runway, for instance, at Langley, and then turn off the gas engine and engage the VTOL and just sit there and electrically hover?
yes, you can technologically do that. Now, the FAA rules, I don't know if you flew FAA, but there's very strict rules on drones.
That's what yeah, above class
FAA
C, right? I
airspace,
mean, you
yep.
can be, yeah.
But normal airspace is 400 feet. They own everything above 400 feet, period.
Yep.
Basically, unless Montana or something. And
So above
then
400 feet, basically, they have to be in some sort of, they have to have clearance to fly in that area. So they're definitely not following FAA rules if they're above 400 feet.
correct. And then if you're within 5 miles of an airport, then the FAA owns that airspace all the way down to the ground.
Yeah.
So you can't be there. Now, here's my big question. If they are flying above 400 feet, which no one has told me that they are, so I don't know.
Hmm.
People are always taking pictures out their window and they see it. If you're above 400 feet, it's hard to pick up with an iPhone.
Yeah.
Be a tiny white dot. The other part is if they're flying over airports or restricted military operation areas, which you kind of mentioned, then again, the FAA will be involved. And the FAA, the way they operate is all you have to do is call them and say, hey, look, they're flying drones over this military base or this airport, or they're above 400 feet. And the FAA is supposed to send out a team and get those guys. I haven't seen that. So that leads me to the thinking of our administration and the deep state combined are actually probably instituting this.
Yeah, because as the fighter, if I took off in an F-16, there's effectively nothing I could do against a drone apart from literally running into it, which would be A, very difficult, and B, extremely dangerous, right? Because if a drone went down the intake of a fighter, it would probably take that fighter down, or there's a very good chance.
Yeah.
We can't take a turkey like the commercial airline engines, with the turbojet. So if one of these drones went down the intake, it would take it down. And then so how would you shoot it down? You'd have to use either a missile or the gun. And there's no way you're going to start shooting 20 millimeter rounds, or launching missiles over or near a populated area. When they took down the Chinese spy balloon, they waited. The reason they waited so long is because they had to get into a warning area. They let it fly into a warning area where they could actually shoot their missiles, and then now they use their weapons. So just going up and taking these things down, you could use like an Iron Dome. That's what we had in Balad. They had a 20 millimeter, would track the mortars coming inbound, and 20 millimeter goes out to about a mile. So you could shoot up to 5,000 or 6,000 feet, I think. But then you still have 20 millimeter rounds coming back down. So they're going to land somewhere, and those are big bullets. So when people are like, just shoot them down, I don't think they understand. Like, yeah, you aim your shotgun up, but in a fighter, like, it just fly 3,000 feet, which is quite low, for us. And nothing can really hit you apart until they get to like 20 millimeter or something bigger. So they're not so easy to shoot down, but I know we do have advanced counter drone systems, and that's what they used at Langley. And they reported that they had these advanced counter drone systems, which should use some sort of ECM, electronic countermeasure, can jam the drones. But you also have drones, if it's going to be for a military purpose now, it will have anti-jamming. So that's where I kind of agree with you, where if you had hobbyist drones, or just going out where it's some just random dude happens to get $100,000 drone, it can fly over the base and then hover and then fly away. I can't imagine that they're also going to have ECM, anti measures against these electronic counter systems. Yeah,
Well,
really
I did it.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who helped me put this company together, and he was in the desert that day with those videos. He worked for a company which developed jamming measures for drones, but this is 5 years ago, they only had the technology to deal with DJI, the Chinese miniature drones with cameras on them. And believe it or not, up in the desert here, Palmdale, there were sometimes disgruntled employees that would try to fly over the base and get pictures and sell them. Give me a break. So
really? Okay.
they were caught, and that's a pretty dumb maneuver. But he worked for this company that sold the jamming devices, and then he moved on to some other company. But the point is, they did exist 5 years ago for the DJI. And what's going on now, I'm going to have to agree with you 100%. Yeah, you can't shoot. I was kind of joking about shooting them down. That was the joke from Tennessee. But if you could jam their equipment that lets them swarm, they wouldn't know where to go, because somebody's still sending them a signal. So the way we flew the big drones was pre-programmed GPS autopilot system, and the pilot could intervene. So that technology is 20 years old. If you take a car-sized drone and you put a GPS pre-programmed path for it to do, and then you give it the AI to talk to the other drones so they can swarm, and then one person sends a signal, go in now, come out now, that could all be done. However, if you could jam that part of it, which I'm sure they're working on. I'm not an expert on that anymore. I retired last year. So uh, you could you could essentially shut them down. The only part that scares me about the drones is that they start putting C4 or different explosives on them and they start landing on our equipment, our fleets, etc. Uh, then I'd be seriously worried.
Yeah, so far that there hasn't been any damage from what I've read. You know, we move on to again in November the RAF bases in the UK. So this is again unidentified drones. We still don't know what they are. We know they're having classified meetings about these drones, but they harassed nuclear-linked military bases, so including Lakenheath, RAF Lakenheath and Feltwell. So I find it really interesting that they had all their lights on. You know, these drones had the lights on, and then I watched it was a video by Angry Astronaut. He's another YouTuber. He went out there and he said that it's been going on for 16 days, you know, and they have people now going out there, journalists going out and seeing lights up in the sky. He said many of them look like drones, but other things look much higher. And it's not a satellite. So it could be something else. I considered maybe it could be one of these drones that we've talked about, one of these car-sized drones that could fly in at a higher altitude, maybe like 6 or 7 thousand feet. Like you said, it's just going to show up as a pinprick. If there's a light on that thing, you'll just see a light and then have it hover using its electrical quadcopter.
Yep. And if you do the psychology behind it, why would somebody put lights on it, which you already mentioned?
Yeah.
That means they want to be seen.
Yeah.
They want it. So if you want to be seen, why would you want to be seen? You'd want to be seen so conversation will spark from that little adventure you had flying over their base. So, and you're military more than I am military. Um, Testing your adversary's response system. They could be doing that, but you can't do that unless they can see you. So turn your lights on. Let's see what they do. And so what are we acting like? We're acting like a bunch of ants running around every city. What the heck? What is that? And maybe there's somebody in a chair somewhere on the other side of the world sitting back laughing. But we're going to have to address it, and ECM is it's probably the best way because
Yeah.
they're all electronic.
I was an electronic attack officer in the aggressors, so I spent 4 years doing that. You know, it seems like you could jam the receiver if it's receiving signals from the ground, but you know, our JDAMs are Joint Direct Attack Munitions. That's our GPS guided bombs. That
Mm-hmm.
they put the receiver on the back, so they couldn't jam it actually. So if you put the receiver, you mentioned that some of these drones can actually receive satellite links. So if it's coming from above, if the receiver's on the top of the drone, then you could shoot it with electric energy from the ground, and it's not going to interfere with the actual receiver, which is on top of the drone. If
Okay, I
it's
didn't.
receiving it from if it's receiving it from above. But let's go through these drone capabilities. So, according to reports, they said they had prolonged hovering over sensitive sites. So, how long do you think, based on your experience, a drone could hover over a site? What's your guess?
Okay, so the military ones we're talking days.
But they still have to be flying, right? They fly in a circle, or can they just hover
Flying,
fully?
they can't hover. They have to fly. Think
Yeah,
of a glider with a jet engine with tons of fuel.
yeah. A Global Hawk, that thing's amazing. Global Hawk's
Yep.
unbelievable. Yeah,
So I'm not going to talk about how many hours, but it's on the internet. Um, but
a lot.
we're talking days.
Yeah,
Uh, they also have a Navy version called the Triton, which protects the fleets out there and marine operations, ocean activity. Same type of deal. So you've got that high-end military operation. And then you've got the one I showed you in that video, which is a small car size, go-kart size, if you will. The
How long could
10,
that hover, you think, though, at a reasonable altitude, say
you use the
a
word
couple thousand
hover,
feet?
you're talking lithium ion battery supplied motors, which is good for about 35 minutes, period.
Period. Okay. Is there any way they could use the gas engines to power the quadcopters?
The gas engines that I saw and that we used were always used to activate the fixed wing part of it so that you had forward momentum at about 50 miles an hour and you could circle.
Yep.
But to take the gas engine and have it like a helicopter, I'm sure that could be done. But again, you're burning so much fuel, to carry that weight, that everyone, these 5 engineers in their garage, they're all going to the VTOL and then the gas engine horizontal movement, because they can sell it as, look, you can be up here at 10 hours, 12 hours. But
Yep.
it once and thrust to weight ratio and all that stuff,
Yep.
you're going to cut back your endurance to the point that you're not marketable. That's what I found in those multiple conventions I went to when I learned what is the guy building in his garage, and they're
So
all out there.
so basically, yeah, it really sounds like a prolonged helicopter type drone, as far as you know, doesn't exist. It's technically possible, but why would you make it from a military perspective when you could get 10 times the endurance and just fly in a little circle?
Yep, and I did see a helicopter that was gas engine that could hover, but the endurance wasn't there. It was hard for them to market it. I mean, it looked really cool. It's a miniature helicopter,
Cool.
and a photo of it somewhere. But yeah, you have to be able to sell this thing you're making. And the hovering seems to satisfy, I'm not the hovering, the circling seems to satisfy most clients' needs. And you're just up there going like this. And you could sit, you push a button and it does it automatically. And your payload, your camera is focused right in that cartel pickup truck. And as you circle, it doesn't leave its target. So the client is getting what they wanted. But did you see any of this activity recently where they were hovering, or weren't they always moving?
That's what's been reported. I've tried to find really good videos, compelling videos, and I haven't found any really compelling videos, but I think according to people's reports is they say that some of these lights just hover there, which if it's for prolonged periods of time, then that really leads me down the path of it could be a possible UAP. If it's just fully hovering there, it's not moving at all. But yeah, everyone's been taking videos with like cell phone cameras or small cameras. It's at night. They're far away. They can't get underneath it, maybe because it's over the base. So I think it's difficult. We also saw, according to reports, they said rapid accelerations and tight directional changes. So do you think that could be done by your common video drones?
They could be very maneuverable. However, it's going to be your normal law of physics that you're used to flying your jet.
Yeah. And they don't go that fast, right? I mean, how fast does that 7 foot wingspan one go? You said 60 knots, I think.
60 knots max. That's max. So
And we
cruise
saw
is
it
like,
there as it left. You could see how fast it actually flies away. So that's
yep,
how fast. I don't know if I wouldn't call that a rapid acceleration.
no, absolutely not. It's slower than a Cessna if you really think about it.
So tight directional changes once it's already moving, that sounds like drone-ish to me. Definitely drone. But if you're talking about a rapid acceleration, that really just sounds like,
It could be UAP.
yeah,
And UAPs are real. They do exist. I had my own personal experience, but as far as seeing them, I have to tell you this story, Chris. You could edit it out later if you don't
sure,
like it, but I have to tell you this story.
please.
I was flying a 737 from Baltimore to Fort Lauderdale at midnight, US Airways. And you know how the East Coast kind of curves. So we're out over the water, and I think we had a limit of 40 miles because of the life rafts and all this requirements. So we're flying and it's midnight and I'm sitting there with the co-pilot. I'm the captain, and you're just for whatever 3.5 hours. And right in front of the windshield is this glowing piece of L-shaped metal on fire, glowing hot red. And we both just look at the windshield, go, and we froze. We froze for like 3 seconds. And then you start wondering, did I doze off? What the heck happened? So I looked over and said, did you see it? He goes, yeah, I saw it. What is that? And he goes, it was an L-shaped piece of iron and it was on fire. Yes. We didn't know what it was. So I said, let's just sleep on this and maybe we'll find out tomorrow. So we turned on the news and it said, uh, Russian satellite safely returns to Earth from decaying orbit off in the Atlantic Ocean, harming no one. It was right in front of our window. And if it had hit us before it disintegrated, because it was disintegrating, they never would have figured out that flight, what happened to it. So we felt kind of lucky. I mean, it was like 10 feet in front of the windshield.
Really?
You're going, whatever, 400 knots.
So you saw it
So,
like fly by, like it was, I guess it was coming down.
yes, it was coming
Flying
down
low.
and it was glowing, and we froze because we thought we were going to hit it. And we didn't know what it was, but human response time. So,
Yeah.
it's the weirdest thing I ever saw flying, because people always ask me, did you ever see a UAP? No, but I did see part of a satellite in front of my windshield, but
10
that's
feet. So it was that close. So nobody on your plane knows how close that was.
nobody in the back saw it because you couldn't. It was right in front of the windshield.
Wow.
And then the next day, pieces of the satellite disintegrated safely off the east coast of the United States, about 50 miles out, which is where we were.
Wow.
So I don't know.
That's a great
So
story. Did
we
you
just,
see any so no other UAPs? We'll get to your UAP experience, but nothing from the cockpit
no, officially no. And
officially. What
by
about
nature,
unofficially?
say again.
What about unofficially?
Um, no, unofficially either.
Okay.
No, my brain is very discerning, as yours is. You want to see the facts, and we've seen bright things, comets, aurora borealis, um, Disney World, that giant dome glow at night like it's an orb. We've seen everything, but my approach has always been, um, let's just remain calm and see what happens, because it's probably going to have a normal explanation. And so that's been my experience, except for that part of it that I put in the book. But from the cockpit, the answer is no, I never saw anything except that broken satellite.
So then the final kind of drone capability that I thought was interesting was they talk about advanced stealth capabilities. So like these drones, maybe the ones over Lake and Heath have radar of avoiding capability, or like we saw at Langley, they don't have any issues with counter drone systems. But as far as you know from all the conferences, is that do they have stealth capabilities built into any of these hobbyist drones for any reasons? Or,
I never heard that.
yeah,
I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I never heard that. For example, our Global Hawk, Trump was president. We were shot down, I think, by, well, let's just say a Middle Eastern country. And it wasn't stealth, and they shot it down, and we lost the equipment, but we didn't lose the pilot. And that's really important. So, as far as the smaller ones, the F-117, due
yeah,
to its shape, or the B-2 bomber.
yeah.
I used to teach those guys. You can't see that plane because the way it's designed and shaped, and the radar just won't hit it correctly to create an image for the guy on the ground. So the drones, I don't know how they would hide that gas engine exhaust. I don't know how they would shape it to be able to do that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means I don't know.
Hmm. Have you
But
heard
it,
of Foo Fighters? I'm sure you, as a pilot and into UAPs. Um, did you know any commercial pilots? Had you heard any stories of them seeing like orbs flying along with the planes or Foo Fighters in any way?
no, I never talked to anyone except I will say this in the airline industry, if you talked about seeing Foo Fighters or you talked about seeing aliens, you were immediately on leave.
Really?
Passengers don't
Immediately.
want crazy. Yeah, passengers do not want crazy pilots. And that's people are afraid enough just to get in a metal tube and go 500 miles an hour. So um, when I came out after my experience and wrote the book, leadership never said anything to me because I ran it through all my friends first, fellow pilots, flight attendants. And they're like, please don't write that part. We don't want to see you go. And so I listened, I pulled it all out, wrote a different book. And then when I retired, I went ahead and told the story. But the world is different now. That was 30 years ago, 1992. So now the world is ready. And now when I bring up this subject, people are excited, they're happy, they want to know.
Oh, cool.
Uh, and they want to know the stuff that's on your show, and they want to know what are these drones. And uh, well, we're in a new generation. They're more open-minded.
You mentioned earlier about you think this could be some sort of distraction. You know, I read a really good essay written by Kevin Wright. He's a UAP investigator. I'll share the link in the show notes below. But he argues or introduces an idea of bidirectional deception, where
Mhm.
UAPs mimic human technology to obscure their true nature. So, according to Colm Kelleher, this echoes historical reports. Um, so, I guess you've already mentioned, but you think it's possible that some of these drones are actually UAPs disguising themselves as human technology? What's your take on that argument, I guess?
Well, I think the ETs have been here for thousands of years. They have bases under the water. They are sometimes interdimensional. They say we live in 11 dimensions. I'm not a physicist. Not that we live in 11, but there are 11. And that the interaction does occur, parallel universes, everything. And I do believe this too. During the height of the Cold War, when we were capable of eliminating Earth, that affected a lot of different beings in different dimensions
Hmm.
with nuclear weapons because we're ripping through time space. And I do believe that we were intervened with, and you can see the videos out there, the little tic tacs flying around a nuclear test, and all of a sudden the nuke doesn't work or a base being shut down. I totally believe in that. And I consider them kind of like the people I met, but guardian angels, if you will, for stupid children.
Okay, so you think it could be possible that they're intervening in some way. So why don't we go through your discussion, really, what motivated you to write the book? Is this experience? So I've read the book, so Among Us, Unveiling Hidden Realities, and I hope to get into this conversation, really. We can talk about a lot of the background on the beings you met, your experience with them. You know, I'm gonna ask a lot of questions because I think you, for whatever reason, you know, didn't include a lot of the details in the book. So we'll cover here. Um, but I did read the book, and it really seemed like, well, I'll let you discuss what the actual goal of it is, and why you wrote the book, and what you think people will actually get out of it.
Fair questions. Uh, I wrote the book because it really happened to me, and it was the most astounding thing in my entire life. In 1992, during that period, we were developing that crew resource management. We were saving lives. Let's just call it a high point in my life. And very athletic. Didn't even drink coffee. Very nutritionally health, meditating, 3, 4, 5 times a day. And then at night, then experimenting with astral projection, where your spirit leaves your body and you can go travel around, which is different than what happened to me on that night in 92. And then lucid dreaming, where you can control your dreams because you're just awake, but you're sleeping. And then I had this overwhelming sensation for months that we're surrounded by very loving beings. And so I wanted to meet them. So one night I was literally zipped out of my bed and I was on this spaceship. And on the spaceship, I was laying on a table and there was this guy like 9 feet tall talking to me. And there were a bunch of other people in the back room. So it was 3-dimensional. And I could definitely see the 3 dimensions on this spaceship. It wasn't a lucid dream or an astral projection. I was there physically. And he looked at me and he goes, "What are you doing here? What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to increase my learning about love, how the human thinks and how we can improve. And I knew you guys were here." And he goes, "Okay, but first you have to ask us permission." And I said, or no, "You have to give us permission." And I said, "Okay, I give you permission." He goes, "Okay." And what he did, and this is the part I left out of the book because I didn't figure it out till later, but your body has 7 chakras and they are the points of energy that come into your body. And you got the third eye, the pineal gland, and all of that. They did something with that. What they did, how they did it, I don't know, but it changed everything in my life. My brain was flooded with thoughts. That's why I wrote 4 books. I just couldn't keep the information in. That's why I went into healthcare. That's why I kept flying. That's why I taught at the railroads, ATC. You just want to share everything you have. And the emotion with these guys in the spaceship was, again, 9 feet tall, light beings, humanoid, but unbelievable love. So I was raised in a family of 12 kids by loving parents, World War II generation. Mom was a nurse, dad was a B-24 electrical engineer, great people, small town. We made cheese. It was pretty good, but the love I felt on the spaceship, there's no words to describe it. So I carried on. I started writing the book, Captain's Discretion, and then I pulled the alien stuff out of it. Captain's discretion means you have authority over your life to choose what you want to do. It's your choice to connect with your inner self or not. So it's all about choice. So there was a friend of mine, he was a Boeing engineer. He was a pretty cool guy, but he also was a hypnotist. And I said, "Hey, can you hypnotize me? I want to see what else happened that night. I know something else happened." And he goes, "Okay." So we went through it and I was hypnotized. And I was back on the ship and there was that guy. And it was kind of like reliving a past story. It wasn't new. But this is the part that was erased from my mind, whatever. I walked into what you would consider like a bridge, a room, and it had a chair in the middle and it had an armrest with a pad on it. And he said, "Go ahead." I said, "Are you going to let me fly?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I put my hand on the pad and it was all shiny, looked like shiny metal. And all of a sudden it became translucent. You could see through it. It's not like on Star Trek where they have a giant glass window or TV cameras. It's the metal became transparent, translucent. I was like, "Wow." He goes, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "Let's go to the moon." So no acceleration, no feeling of anything, just we were there. Then we went somewhere else. And I said, "That's really cool. That's good enough for me. I'm just happy to meet you guys. Thank you for everything." And then I came out of the hypnotism and thought, wow, that was really cool. So that's the story in the book. Plus, there's stories I didn't put in there of miracles, like when I was on a motorcycle and it's like somebody said, get out of this lane, go in the center. And I popped the clutch and I went there and somebody came by and hit my jacket and said, oh my God, there was a motorcycle. I didn't even see him. And then my brother got run over by a truck and we were all running from the big kids. We were like first graders. And the other one said, you know, when the truck ran him over, it almost tipped over. That's all he kept saying. That's all he kept saying. And then 30 years later, I met him in the small town festival. And I said, you remember when my brother got run over by a truck? He goes, oh, yeah, that truck almost tipped over. So he still had the same story 30 years. So what makes a truck over a kindergarten kid almost flip when the wheels are on is so there's forces here we don't understand. And they're good forces. There's also bad stuff. That's where the law of attraction in the book gets into it. Your vibrational frequency, you're a walking magnet. You're attracting everything into your world. Me personally, I'd rather build a relationship with these guys that are the ETs, and then later we could build one together. But for right now, I don't need to know exactly how they're flying. So what I put in the book was Bob Lazar. Bob seemed to have the highest grasp on it. However, he says that the ship turns and then flies this way. I don't know if you ever read his stuff.
Yep, definitely. Yep. And that's what I thought of immediately when you said it goes translucent.
Yep. But we didn't do this. You asked about the goal. Was there's so much wonderfulness inside of all of us. And at my age, we were, our mom had a station wagon. She'd drop us off at the lake or in the woods, and hopefully we all lived and we get back in. There's no such thing as seatbelts. And we explored. We were always exploring outside. And when I see a whole generation addicted to a computer screen and living through social media, I think it's more difficult to connect with their higher being, their inner being, their true self. And so I wrote this book with that goal of, hey, it's out there and there's even people that'll help you. We call them ETs. And it's okay. So anyway, that's kind of the story on that book.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I'd love to get some more details, to go back. So when you said you're laying in bed, right, and you'd already been practicing this astral projection, you practiced meditation, you were saying you're meditating 4 to 5 times a day. Why did you do all that? Do you remember why you started doing that, or what was the reason you started meditating and started trying to astral project?
Well, during the time, 31 years old, I already had lost 17 close friends to aviation accidents.
Hmm. Wow.
Not to mention the 500 passengers, which were not my passengers, another guy's passengers. So there was a lot of death. Then simultaneously, I was at the time married to a U.S. Air captain, a girl. We had 2 kids, and that marriage ended up in divorce. So you could say tough times.
Yeah.
And then I was an avid reader, 2 books a day, and there was other philosophies out there. And I thought, I'm going to pursue these philosophies. They seem, according to the expert psychologists, et cetera, human factors guys, that you could fight your way out of this bag. So I did. And that's how I started. It was because of tragic times that I decided to do something completely different.
And do you think this whole experience has changed your life for the better?
Totally, completely different. Um, One thing is the law of attraction, the ability to create what you want. So right now I'm on a boat. It's 13 tons. It's a big sailboat. It's what I wanted to do. I'm in the Pacific. The weather's great. I don't talk about the name of the boat or the city, but before I got here, I would sit in front of a YouTube channel that had a camera on a dock in a marina, and I think it was in Texas. But either way, you could hear all, the marina noises with the lines and the bells. And I'd sit there for an hour a day until I got to live here. Probably like how you ended up in Portugal and going down the Nile and all of those fun things.
Yeah, I didn't ask too many questions. I kind of just,
Flow with it.
yeah, went
Yeah.
with the flow. Yeah, exactly. I just didn't, what's the best thing I could do right now or the most exciting thing I could do? And a lot of times you don't even necessarily want to do that. But I ended up doing it.
You know
So
who was on TV like last week? William Shatner, Captain Kirk. And people were interviewing him, and he said, the universe is giving you all the good things you ever wanted. You just have to pay attention. And he kind of laughed. That's all he said.
I have a good friend, Reuven Levitt. He's actually been on the show. He's a meditation guru, been doing it for 16 years. And he says really the only thing you can actually change is your perspective
Mm.
on the world. And if you can just practice, you sit at a stoplight or something, and you can even practice having a negative thought about someone, and then the same person have a positive thought, and see how you feel internally. And there's huge differences. And you can do it about anyone. If you have a negative thought about what a leader, a new someone you don't like or an enemy nation or something, and then now you can have a positive thought about them and wish them well, and then see how you feel on the inside, actually, because you're not really changing anything on the outside, but you definitely changing your perspective on the world. So it sounds like your perspective on the world definitely changed. So let's go back. So you're basically in the bed, and you said you're whisked up, and you were physically there, right? Or are you lying on some sort of table, or
A white table bed, kind of like a gurney.
and what's
That's what,
what's the ship look like, inside? Do you remember?
well, off in the distance, I'm going to say like 20 feet, were 9 or 10. There were male and female beings. I
How
could
could you
just tell.
tell they were male and female?
I just felt it. I knew it. And they looked a little bit different, but don't ask me to describe it because I can't. Um,
You
but
said
they
some
were all,
nine. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
9 feet, glowing, full of love. And they were very busy working on stuff on that ship.
So were they
It,
wearing clothes when you say they're light beings? What does that mean, a light being?
um, I put a picture in the book. I had a lot of difficulty describing the answer to your question. So I had AI develop what I considered an image.
Yeah, can you hold it closer there? I can probably get it. Okay, so that's when you're actually flying the ship.
That's the flying part, but there were people, and that's the best AI could do. But that's basically what they looked like. And they were full of love. And it was like they knew everything about me, except the leader said, why are you here? That was the first question he asked. Then he said, you have to give us permission. And I had to say it out loud. And then he
Okay, and
just
when he says, is he talking to you with normal words, or is he communicating telepathically? Or
telepathically,
but you had to
I didn't,
say out loud. You had to literally say, "I give permission."
I'm not telepathic.
Okay, so you were talking basically. So you think you're hearing them talk in your head, and then you were just speaking.
Yep.
Okay, and so
That
when
was
you
my, go ahead.
so go ahead. Sorry.
That was my limitation. I'm not telepathic.
Well, you were receiving telepathic thoughts, so maybe you are telepathic.
I don't know. But yeah, I could hear him, but I didn't see his mouth move.
Hmm. And so when you gave him permission, is that when your memory ended and you had to go back later and do the hypnosis?
When I gave him permission, he moved me to a different place and then a different table. I don't know why. And then the next thing I remember is waking up in the morning and going, "Oh my God," and jumping out of bed with the most incredible feeling I've ever had in my entire life and wondering, what the heck was that? And then my brain got flooded with um, this is how time space work, microtubules, vibrational energy through the body, carrying each electron, and just flooded with thoughts like that, that if I didn't put down on paper so I could look at them and separate them from my brain would have exploded. That's just an expression.
Okay. And when you said he moved you to another location, do you remember how you moved? Did you like stand up and walk through the ship, or do you remember?
You know, I just remember the table was pointing a different direction. So I was sitting up and then I was over there laying down. I don't know how I moved, to be
Okay.
honest. I don't know how I got up there.
Yeah. And when you did so when you went back and did the hypnosis, again, is it the same thing? You don't know how you moved to the chair? To the
I was walking.
You were
I
walking.
was literally walking into a new room and he put his hand out and I could hear him say, "You sit in the chair." So I did, and then that flight took place.
Okay.
And I was very happy to see the moon and Mars, and it was reddish. I remember that. And then that's all I wanted to see. I didn't
When
ask any
they
other.
when it went translucent, like what did you see in front of the ship when the metal in front of you went translucent? Do you remember?
Like the moon off in a distance. And he said, "Where do you want to go?" And I didn't have to talk at that point because up to that point I was talking. I just thought it, and my understanding was it was going to go through my hand into that red pad, and then the ship was there.
Okay. And when you say you're at the moon, so what did you see at the moon? Do you remember? Or
No, just it was big and it was close, but nothing that you can't imagine that I didn't see anything unusual other than you see like from NASA pictures. But I wasn't searching for anything. At that time in life, I didn't believe that there were beings living on the moon, or even if the moon might be hollow or whatever. I
yeah.
didn't think about those things. I just bought a book that said, "Who built the moon?" Um, so there's new information coming out all the time. But no, to me, the moon was just simply our moon. I was all excited about the love I was feeling
Yeah.
because it had been an extremely stressful period with the crashes and the divorce and the meditation and the athletic, the job, a big runner, bicyclist, that kind of stuff kept me centered. And then eventually new girlfriend, etc. But um, to me, it was I finally connected with those beings that are hanging around, taking care of you all the time. And I still think that they're taking care of all of us.
And you say you felt the love, is it emanating like from a certain direction, or what does that mean?
No,
What does
my
it mean
body
to
was
feel
just
incredible love?
overwhelmed with that feeling. So think of like in your life when you really in love with your child was born or you
Yeah.
met your spouse
Yeah.
and you're just so happy. You multiply that times 100.
Wow.
That's what it that's what it felt like. And it was a good thing. And what I believe is that that is your connection not only to the other beings, but also to your inner self, your true self. And then, we wear this uniform of how we have to behave in society. We say something wrong, then people get mad.
Okay, so then you said you went to Mars, right? Is it the same
Just
thing you
looked
just
at,
imagined? I want to go to Mars.
yep. And then we were there. No acceleration, no G forces. and no banking. Aircraft banks, that's how we turn the
Yeah.
aircraft. You don't have to bank a spacecraft. I mean, there was no banking. It was just like, now you're going that direction.
But did you
And
see movement, or do you remember?
oh yeah, there's movement. Everything's moving around. You're moving,
Yeah.
but there's no G forces or banking or stopping. When you stop, everything just stopped moving.
Hmm.
It was beautiful. I mean, I wish we had ships like that. And that's what they're trying to build, but I don't think they're using them for good reasons.
It reminds me of like how we move through video games, a simulation where you're just going to
Mm.
scroll, if you're, or like Google Maps, you just scroll down to get zoom in onto Google Maps or something. You're just going to move there, with no
Yeah,
gravity or something.
yeah. Uh, it's funny. So this was 92, and nobody's asked me this. I'm surprised. In 96, I believe, they came out with the movie Stargate. And then Stargate, not in that original movie, but in the series, which came after 9/11. So that was 2002, I think. They have a chair where you put your hand in and you can control um, drone warheads. You can control a whole bunch of stuff. And my chair didn't look like their chair in the TV show. But what happened to me happened 15 years before that TV show. I just want to make that clear.
And you said they're 9 feet tall. So like, did you have to like jump up on into the chair? Or was it bigger than normal? Or was it just,
No, it's like a hospital gurney. No, it wasn't like they're. Oh, the chair to fly, you
yeah,
mean? Um, no, it fit me perfectly. That's a good question. How
huh,
did they sit? I
yeah,
don't know.
interesting. And did you fly anywhere else? You mentioned the moon, Mars,
No,
anywhere else?
all I wanted to do. And then I felt like I achieved my goal and that was the end of it. I didn't want to know anything else.
So how did it end? You see, do you remember through hypnosis? Did they say goodbye? Did you hug them as you go to leave or something? Or, how?
No, no, I don't. It was just kind of like the feeling I got. You, you're done here or are you done here?
Yeah.
I remember saying, yeah, I'm done here. And then I kind of drifted off into something else of my own personal with my higher self, which I can't even explain, so I'm not even going to try. But it was all wonderful. And then I woke up from the hip. Well, you know how they do that. I'm going to count to five backwards, and then you're going to wake up. So we did that, and then I woke up, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Then I could remember everything. So um, it was a tremendous experience. I mean, I couldn't write a postcard when I was in college. And then I wrote 4 books. I mean, everything changed. So,
Did you
and
have
then
any later interactions? Any follow-on
me,
communication?
no, I did not. However, when I went to the retreat in Tucson, you met Jesse Beltran.
Yeah, I had him on the show. Yep.
Yep, and he discusses implants that people receive, you know, people in prisons, people who are in psych wards, people who are in the military, and they're experimental to work with controlling the brain, etc. And the Havana syndrome of
Hmm.
what happened to our embassy down there when. Um, so Jesse was super interested in what my story was, and I said, uh, well, before I say that, I was at a Hilton Grand Resort, and there was an older couple reading my book, and the guy asked me, and what I had just published it like that week, and he asked me a question, and I expected to hear, "You're crazy. You made all this up." like, I was kind of prepared for that. I don't care. But that's not what he said. Do you know what he said? He said, how come you got to go? How come you got to go? And I go, what? I said, you could go too. You just have to ask for it and get in that state of mind where you can receive it. Oh, so I thought that was the nicest response. So Jesse, who you met on your show, he wanted to go there. So the next morning, he swears he went there, but and he wasn't mad. He was just saying they didn't let me fly, probably because I'm not a pilot. Then he did it again the next weekend.
Wow.
So he's actually in contact with them, and it's the same deal. Overwhelming sense of love.
Hmm.
9 feet tall, glowing beings, spaceship.
Wow.
So yeah, you ought to have Jesse out to tell his story. Maybe he remembers more.
Do you know the color? I've heard different colors. I'm curious what you would say.
On what?
What their color is for these beings you met?
Bright yellow,
Bright yellow,
white,
like
yellow,
the
white.
white. Okay. Yeah, I've heard a lot. I've heard blue beings lately, and love, like you mentioned. So, I guess what is you mentioned before? They've been here thousands of years. You believe they're looking after us. Is that the? Did they tell you that, or is that what you got from a specific download from them?
They didn't tell me that. That's what I just assumed. That just it just felt like that. It felt like you were a kid and your grandpa came in and took care of you. And you always knew grandpa would be there or grandma, whatever. That's what it felt like. So that's why I said that. But they didn't say, we've been here thousands of years.
Yeah.
So, as far as the colors, every chakra has a color. You start with white at the top, and these are center points of energy. Then you've got, I believe, blue. I hope I get this right. You've got orange here, and there's 7 of them. But I don't know why I walked away with this. And I told Jesse this because he's talking about these implants. I always say, put the blue light around you, which is to me like a shield. Only good things can get through. So the colors, but you asked what color are the beans, and they're bright yellow, white. Yeah.
Hmm.
But you know how colors are, how significant they are. I think I put that in one of my books. So blue has a calming effect. Red is for alarm. The same as your like in the cockpit. You have blue lights, you have red lights, you have yellow, warning, orange. The human factors guys that built those ships or aircraft knew that.
And I've heard also that the ships could actually have their own consciousness or something. So if you connected
That
with the
was,
ship, did you feel anything?
yes, that's how it read my mind to go flying where it was supposed to. In other words, the ship itself, semi-organic. I don't know how it works, but it's part of their people. It's part of them. It's an extension of them. It's not like you and I when we strap in with a 5-point seatbelt into an aircraft and then you want to be one with your plane. You can hear that vibration. You can hear that noise. Yeah, multiply that times 100. That's what it is. Just curious. You can edit this out later. Did you notice from all the flying that when you're driving a car, or for me on my boat or driving a car, when you hear any type of or feel any type of vibration or noise, you're hyper alert?
Hmm. I don't know.
I do. And maybe I had too much flight.
Hyper alert. I definitely listen. Like today, I was listening to the tires roll. I was like, is that a different sound on the?
So you are hyper alert.
I definitely pay attention. Yeah. But I don't know, I guess, how you define hyper alert. But yeah, today I was listening to the sound of the tires, and I think it was a little colder, so the air was denser inside the tires, so it was putting out some different sound going over little bumps, etc.
Well, just compared to other people, they don't pay attention to anything. Um, I don't know. I always feel like I'm listening to everything, but it's a safety thing. But you got to do that on the boat, especially if you catch kelp in the propeller.
Or a
You're a little,
lobster pot.
or oh, that's even worse.
Yeah.
So I got you can edit this out. This is for if I hit the lobster pot.
Yep, the lobster pots.
I got to jump out and get my knife and cut it off. That's funny. Yeah, we fish for lobster right off the dock here.
Wow.
You just need a license, $50, and then you can catch big ones.
Wow, cool. It's good to hear they're still there.
Yeah, they are. They call it spiny lobster. There's no claws. It's the
Yep.
native California. Um, but some guys that are really into it, they'll, well, they have fishing boats. It's different. They'll move their boat and catch. You're allowed 7. So they'll bring 3 people. That's 21 lobsters. They'll come back with.
Wow. That's good. So it sounds like the population's doing well. You mentioned
Yeah,
also, you mentioned about as a pilot where you guys just froze, you and your co-pilot. And I think that's a normal training as a pilot. I remember now I'm retired. I haven't flown in, approaching 5 years now. But, something would drop off the counter and I would just watch it happen, whereas my
yeah.
wife would be super quick and catch it, you know, and I think you're just trained into that as a pilot. You can't make immediate reactions, you're going to cause a giant crash. You really have to aviate, navigate, communicate. So it's really, you got to process the information, make sure you're seeing what you are seeing. And now I'm quicker now. So now something falls off, I'll just grab it, so I make much quicker reactions. But as a trained pilot, I think you're just trained to not make those reactions right away.
They want you to assess first.
Yeah.
And there's an old joke when I learned how to fly. The crew's flying their 727. You got 3 pilots in there, and the engine fire alarm goes off, and the co-pilot was eating his food with his tray table, whatever, and he takes a whole tray of food and throws it back against the door and says, "Engine fire, engine fire." And what should we do? And the captain says, "Well, first you're going to clean up your mess, and then we're going to aviate, navigate, communicate." So it was an old funny airline story. I'm sure it was just picked up, but yeah, to assess. In fact, if you watch, I have the video here. I don't know if you're going to want to put it up there, but how not Tom Hanks, how Sully handles the NTSB when he says, "Can we get serious now?" Did you ever see that?
I did. I don't remember what he says.
It's about 15 minutes if you want to watch it. I don't know if you have time, but it's right here. It's the best example of I taught a course at Northrop Grumman, and the hospital's called, well, it's called the Just and Safe Culture, which is based on one of my books. However, the CEO loved it and said, "Let's make it more simple. Just call it Safe to Speak Up." We want Northrop Grumman employees safe to speak up. So I made videos for them and a whole bunch of stuff. And they loved it. And they sent me a lot of thanks because I kept saying, "We're not going to end up like Boeing." And they go, "What do you mean like Boeing?" And this was 5 years before Boeing went down the shithole. Airline, can we get serious now?
Can we get serious? Yeah.
Sully was a human factors expert, but he chose not to teach at US Air. He was probably in my classes because I taught everybody there, but it's not like he learned it from me. He was just a super intelligent guy. And he was teaching in the universities when I was teaching in the hospitals. So he knew his stuff. Sully was the perfect guy to hit birds. Number one, he was very experienced. Well, we're all experienced. Okay. Number two, though, he was a glider pilot,
Hmm.
and that airplane was a glider.
Yeah.
I'm not a glider pilot. Most of us are not. And number three, he was a human factors expert, so he could defend the aviation community and take on these 200 lawyers that want to suck the blood out of you. So he says, "Can we get serious now?" And they're like, "What?" And what he's going to talk about is the human response time, which you and I were just talking about.
Yeah.
You just don't yank on the yoke and bank over and just head for the. How many other airplanes are you going to hit on the way?
Yeah.
And if you don't the APU or run some kind of checklist, like I said, the Airbus requires electricity, but the APU can handle it. And if you don't start the APU, the rammer turbine is going to deploy out the right wing. And when it deploys, now you're going to have asymmetrical force.
Yeah, and an APU, just for the audience, is auxiliary power unit. That's your backup power unit that's going to run.
Yeah,
You don't have your full hydraulic power, electrical powers, etc.
it's a small turbine engine in the rear of the aircraft. You can kind of hear it buzzing when you're on the ground, but it can run all the systems pretty much by itself. And the Airbus is fly-by-wire, so you need that. So he says, "Can we get serious now?"
208 seconds total.
208 seconds for the entire water landing event from the bird strike, but they're going to add 30 seconds to show the delay in human reaction time. And when I used to teach this at Northrop Grumman, I would say, if their fire alarm goes off now, how quickly are you going to make it to the parking lot? And people would say, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, first of all, you're going to sit here for 30 seconds and talk about it.
At least.
Then one you're going to go out and go down the hallway and ask if they know anything about it. Then you're going to ask somebody else if it's a practice run. And then after about 3 or 4 minutes, you're going to start walking to the parking lot." And you know what's so funny, Chris? The fire alarm went off. Literally with a real fire. In that, because our training rooms were above the hangar, and there was some kind of hangar fire, a real fire. And everybody sat there. And I said, "When are you guys going to leave?" And so it really made my point. So they're going to give him 30 seconds. So in the simulator, they're going to punch the clock, sit on their hands for 30 seconds, and then turn. That 30 seconds is designed to simulate starting the APU, running the checklist, etc. How about calling an ATC before you bank that aircraft?
Yeah, before you make an illegal turn, or back to an airport, busy airport. Yeah.
208 seconds total.
The Hudson River, right? Or
Yeah,
you
but I
say,
mean this NTSB
oh,
interrogation.
totally. Yes,
did.
totally.
Yeah.
100% accurate. I knew the chairman. I used to fly with the chairman of the NTSB, and he was a super guy. And now he's president of Embry-Riddle.
Hmm.
But I kind of think he wanted to make sure this was done correctly, because it was done correctly. They let Sully speak and say, "Can we get serious now?" Once he did that, everything turns around. If it had been just a regular airline pilot, they would have sat there like a lump of coal and take their beating, and we all would have suffered. I'm just glad it was him.
The birds, that took a long time to go through.
Yep.
I will tell you one story. You mentioned a Canadian geese there.
Yeah.
I had a buddy in Alaska, amazing pilot. He was flying an incentive flyer, an F-16, so he had a guy in the back seat, and they hit a Canadian geese. And so the incentive flyer is just a maintainer, in his one flight in his life bonus ride. And a Canadian geese is a really big bird going down a very small intake. And so the engine's totally trashed, and he's pretty far away from the runway. I don't know how many miles, but calm and collective, he says, no need to worry. in 30 seconds, one way or another, we'll be on the ground. So they were either going to punch out or the plane was going to make it because they were out of glide range. He was out of glide range.
Yeah. What did they do?
He landed. So it was the GE engine. Actually, the GE is an amazing engine. It could really just keep going even on fire and with no oil. There's all these stories.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
so he landed just fine. They had obviously the engine was totally trash.
We had a 737-200. I think it was a Rolls-Royce engine. It's old model from the 70s, 80s. And they said we hit a bird. So I went out there on the ramp just to check out this guy's airplane. All you could smell was dead meat. What a goose went through, but it broke the blades, and the blades tore up the engine
Yeah.
and then sliced through the fuselage in like row 12,
Wow.
like
I always
bullet
wondered
holes.
about that. Yeah.
Oh God. Um,
So the turbine blades flew off and flew right
right through it.
into the cabin. Wow.
But there was nobody sitting in that row.
Lucky.
And the pilot made it back on one engine. It's like, oh my God. But the smell was terrible. But if you break one blade, you know what happens. Now you got shrapnel everywhere. So, funny.
Well, it's been great, Peter.
Well,
Why don't we close it out? So what do you think of these final statements on the drones? What do you think about all these drone sightings? You see them in the news. You mentioned a distraction. Do you think it's a planned distraction?
yeah, I think it's a planned diversionary effort to keep us from thinking about what we should be thinking about. So maintain your situational awareness. And as you saw in the videos and the drones, they're easy to make and they're readily available.
And what do you think we should be focusing on? What have you learned from your experiences like you described here?
We should focus on a better America and our personal higher growth and taking care of our families.
Excellent.
Yeah. And not to be diverted with all these stories that are going to be coming out every single month until, well, even after January. Yeah. So
And you seem optimistic. Are you optimistic for the future? You've felt this amazing love, and I hear that a lot for near-death experiencers. They say that a lot, that there's this unbelievable love. They never felt that, on Earth. Are you optimistic, I guess, for the future?
I'm completely optimistic. Also, during COVID, I had a medical reaction to Ozempic. I'm going to keep saying that name, but no, I died.
Wow.
Yeah, I bled out. My blood pressure is 50/40. And I was surrounded by beautiful white light, and it was the same feeling. And I made a choice that I want to come back and I want to do some things. So, yeah, I'm very optimistic. And I think that we're on a path where we can take care of ourselves and we'll be okay. Very optimistic.
And so you mentioned what you tried to do with the book. So why do you think people should read it? What's your goal to have it make an impact?
I tried to do the best job in that book to let people know that inside them is all the answers and their connection to the universe and God. And it's not on social media. It's not in anybody else. It's not in a guru. It's inside yourself. And I do put some lessons in there about how to meditate that people taught me that can really help with that. And the end game is joy. It's as simple as that. Everybody wants happiness. And on the way there was this writer, Marianne Williamson. She wrote The Course in Miracles. And beautiful book. It's actually a course, but she said, as soon as you figure out exactly what you want, everything you hate's going to come slamming at you and then it'll disappear. And I was like, what? But it's true. It's true. And I think that's where the book of Revelation comes in. That which was hidden shall be revealed once you make the new path. So choices. I guess I would summarize Among Us as you have the choice to tune into your internal power. And it's a good thing. And don't be distracted.
It sounds like there's going to be difficult times, and then just to do your best, get through them, and then there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe literally.
I have faith in all of us. And the reception of the book so far has been tremendous. So just keep trucking along.
Excellent. Well, I'll put a link to your books. They can check it out in the description. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Peter, for speaking out and coming on the show. And it was great to talk to a pilot and enjoyed all the stories. Great to meet you.
Really enjoyed it, Chris. Thank you for running the show. That's tremendous.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for being on it. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care. Bye.
Everyone else, thanks for being here. Sign up for patreon.com or become a YouTube member if you want to help support the show, and have a great rest of your day. Peace.